The story of the Kiwi couple who've spent years camping deep in the bush, offline and off the grid, and the unexpected challenges of life in the wild.
The way we live is obviously quite rare, but it's possible because we do it.
You know, in other cultures like the Inuits, they use morning urine to, to wash their airways. So I peed in an empty tin and I put it over my head and it helped.
Was that disgusting?
Well, it was my own urine.
Welcome back. Anyone who's done a bit of hiking knows how hard it is to plan for a few days off the grid. The questions of shelter, how much food to take and what clothing you'll need. Imagine living your entire life that way. Dutch-born Miriam Lancewood and her Kiwi husband Peter have spent the past 6 years living months at a time in the wild, remote locations where they have no communication, minimal food and just a tent. Mark Kreisel tracked them down in the middle of the North Island.
To really go off the grid,
We don't have a house to come back to.
you need to hit the road,
So it's not like, let's go home.
leave it all behind.
We can't, right?
And that's just the start of the journey.
How far do we have to go?
Oh, it shouldn't be more than an hour.
Up the creek,
This isn't the way most people live their lives. This is not normally the way they go home after picking up the groceries.
No, that's right.
through the real Koru Lounge.
So a lot of the places are not easy for us to get to.
And you've arrived.
Well, that's our camp
Very nice.
where we've been for several weeks.
They're not broke, nor are they on some kind of camping holiday.
Dinner's already? Tea, even better.
For the past 6 years, Miriam and Peter have chosen to live as far away as possible from the rest of us, learning to live off the land and fend for themselves.
We were both longing for the wilderness and natural places.
I think there's many different ways people could live in the 21st century. The way we live is obviously quite rare, but it's possible because we do it.
Miriam's from Holland, one of the flattest and most crowded countries on earth.
No, I think I was a much more nervous person when I lived in Holland, when the speed is so much faster and I was all those exams in school and universities, and yeah, I was quite nervous. I used to bite my nails. Yeah.
Peter's a Kiwi. They met in India around 10 years ago.
He was looking after a little nature reserve and he was telling me about the beautiful place, and actually the very next day I moved in with him.
That quick?
They're quick.
I like to take risks.
And was Miriam a risk?
No.
Well, you think about it, that if you've got someone 30 years younger, that's a risky person to get in a relationship with, in a sense of always trying to keep up. Yeah?
Miriam was school teaching in the South Island when they decided to leave the material world behind. Her principal was horrified.
She asked me what I was going to do with him when I had a period. Yeah, and I had a good laugh about that one. Of course, we just wash in the river and we just deal with everything. It's all natural things, you know. Women have lived like this for thousands of years.
But living in nature can have its challenges when it comes to bathing.
And my first winter I suffered from dandruff. So then Peter said, you know, in other cultures like the Inuits, they use morning urine to, to wash their airways. So I peed in an empty tin and I put it over my head and it helped.
Was that disgusting?
Well, it was my own urine.
It's still urine.
Yeah, it was very stinky. Yeah. So after the urine treatment, I washed it with soap and that was all right.
Every day is about problem solving and surviving, with no power or even a solid roof over their heads.
I think having skills is definitely a good thing to have.
Yeah, in case.
Oh, just in
Backup.
case.
In case of what?
Pandemic. Imagine how quickly a super pandemic is spread around the world. This is the place you want to be when that happens.
It just gives confidence that you can survive if something happens, whatever that is, even a power cut.
I wouldn't say we're survivalists in that we think it's imminent. It's more like I think it's a potential.
Their first foray into the wilderness was tough, very tough. They'd headed off up into the South Marlborough Mountains in the late autumn, carrying the absolute basics.
The first winter, right? Yeah, that was very cold and then wet and very uncomfortable and then very boring, and Yeah, many adjustments we had to go through, didn't we?
We'd been working towards something and then we were there and we had no future.
Yeah, and then what?
Then what? What happens now? No plans to go
Yeah.
anywhere, we're here. And
So we
nothing
are in the
happens.
wilderness, we finally made it, and then what? What are you going to do next day?
And the next day, and the next day.
Yeah.
It was also bitterly, bitterly cold.
I got so cold that I started losing weight and lost appetite. I used to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning cold, and then I would just lie there waiting for the night to be over. So
That was the time before
Yeah.
we had meat. We were just eating lentils and rice, waking up so hungry, our stomach was hurting, wasn't it?
Miriam had grown up vegetarian, but to survive in her new life, she would have to learn to kill and eat meat.
This is the little horn of the first goat that I shot with my bow and arrow. So this is my first kill. I think it's ethically quite a good point that if I wanted to eat meat, then at least I should kill it myself. But it was very difficult. Even just touching meat. It's very, very strange if you never touched it. You know, it's nothing like a carrot.
Miriam's clearly much more comfortable now as the chief food gatherer. The crossbow's been replaced by a rifle and a knife.
Tonight we have wild pork. So this is a little pig that I saw last week. And Peter made this delicious curry.
Do you feel bad about killing a little pig?
Yes, I feel bad about every animal, really. But I do really like to eat them. This is the bone marrow.
Fresh fruit and veggies are harder to find out in the wild.
Oh,
So every couple of weeks, Miriam sticks a thumb out and hitches to the nearest town.
quite overwhelming, all the noise, all the buses and cars and all the people. Freedom is for free.
She busks for cash, then spends the money she makes at the supermarket.
We've got some flour to bake bread. I've got a bit of butter and
Carrots, broccoli,
Yep, some fruit.
tomatoes.
Yeah,
What do you miss the most?
I think that will be fruit. Yeah, we sometimes eat vitamin C tablets, but we have to wait for autumn to get the berries in the bush.
It costs Peter and Miriam around $5,000 a year to live like this, way below the poverty line. Not much is thrown away. Everything has a purpose.
This is my my possum jacket, and I've used all the animal skins to put that into this jacket, and I've made duvets and a mat as well to sleep on. Yeah, which is incredibly warm.
There's always something to do, even if it's just sitting and thinking. Or writing to her sister in Holland.
Dearest Sophie, can you imagine a way of life so quiet, so timeless, so abundant and full that watching a single leaf fluttering from the trees, lifted into the air by a little breeze, turning silver in the sunshine is meaningful?
What do you think of the way we live our lives?
I don't really know how you can stand it. How can you deal with sleep deprivation? And you be so tired and you have all these things and so much pressure. And how do you deal with that without becoming so dull? How can you keep clarity? How can you keep vital and have to go through it? And how do you deal with monotone existence, every day the same, with alarm clock, running around the clock? How do you deal with that? I have no idea.
No cell phones, no coverage, TV, radio or internet. It can be easy to forget the outside world exists. Well, almost.
So when the earthquake happened in Christchurch, we knew that because the airplanes stopped flying.
Because we were in the main line that runs sort of Auckland, Christchurch, and suddenly no jets. Something's happened. We didn't know whether it was a terrorist attack in Auckland or what it was really, but we knew something happened. In the Pike River mine, we actually heard that explosion.
We were miles away, but we heard it in the chimney.
A huge roar. I was like, what on earth was that?
We thought it was some
I had
explosion.
No idea.
Case in point, at exactly the same time we were doing this interview, Prime Minister John Key resigned.
For me, this feels the right time to go.
We didn't find out for 2 days.
As soon as I go out into the outside world, I spend all my time reading newspapers, watching all the TV channels, YouTube. Ultimately, the human world doesn't change much. It's like a rhythm.
They've lived in the mountains, by beaches, in the bush and tramped the length of the country. 10 months of walking which pushed them to the absolute limit of physical endurance.
So we went up into the Tararuas, and there was a last section of Te Araroa North Island. On the top of the mountains we found ourselves in a big storm. A lot of rain and wind and hail, and that's when I learned how to endure. We had absolutely no option but to endure.
Enduring has its limits. The age difference between Peter and Miriam is 30 years, but the bond is strong. They couldn't do it alone.
He's a little bit the brain and I'm a little bit the body. And so together we are very strong.
Peter is 63 now. It's an age when creature comforts become more attractive.
Do you worry about getting older and living in the bush like this, though?
I could see that one day comes when the physical body can't do it. But until that time, I don't have a problem with it.
But at times, recurring malaria from his travels in the tropics have made him very sick.
What will you do when he gets to the point where he can't physically live out here anymore?
We have to find a way to deal with it. Yeah.
What will you do if he can't pick up his pack and carry it and keep up with you?
Then I'll carry it for him. I'll carry him.
How much longer can they carry on? Miriam has written a book about their experiences and it's been picked up by publishers in New Zealand and Europe.
Wildernis, het wilde hert, Miriam Lancewood.
She's been back in Holland on the publicity trail. The tools of her trade can make the locals a bit jumpy.
Dit is mijn jaarsmes.
But can they still stay off the grid if light is now shining into their lives?
See, I don't know what lays in front of me, right? But I should be preparing myself. Peter and I will travel, we do all sorts of things. You know, we like to go through open doors. So if there's some opportunity to go somewhere, we take it.
And Miriam's book, Woman in the Wilderness, comes out in New Zealand this week.